So, this week we are streaming some old school Game Boy games, which is kind of like a passion thing for you.
Yeah, this is brand new. Nintendo just dropped this bomb in their February Nintendo Direct, which was last week at the time of this stream. And we are from MyGamer.com. You can follow me on Twitter at ZachGaz, ZACKGAZ. And this is a passion of mine. When I saw this, I kind of freaked out for a second there because on my YouTube channel, I've been covering extensively Game Boy games and just like weird and obscure Game Boy games and their unique features for well over a year now on my YouTube channel. So when I saw this, I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. This is great. So today we're just going to be streaming some of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games because me and Gillman, we neither of us currently have a subscription to the expansion pack service. I will be getting one soon now that you can play Game Boy Advance games on it. Really excited about that. But yeah, these original Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games, I think one emulate really well on the Switch Online. I think Nintendo kind of did their homework, unlike the launch of the N64 games. And even though it's still early in the life, I think the initial roster of games is it's interesting and it's a really widespread of games. You got your platformers here like Wario Land, Game and Watch Gallery, really great compilation of Game and Watch games. You got Alone in the Dark, which is like the odd man out, the weird game to include, but a little bit of everything. And the service is only going to grow. They did announce that Kirby's Tilt and Tumble will be coming to the service, which is awesome because that game was the only Game Boy game to feature an accelerometer. So you played that game by literally tilting the system back, forward, up, down to guide Kirby as if he was a marble on the screen. But the problem is when that game came out back in the day, you couldn't see the damn screen because Game Boy Color was not backlit. And even if you played with a worm light, you really couldn't see when you're like rotating the screen. So to be able to play with your Switch on a backlit screen is going to be awesome. So I'm really excited about that. Even though it's not the best Kirby game, but just to have it with a backlit screen, I think is going to be
Interesting.
really cool. Yeah, super. Like hey, Nintendo didn't forget about this obscure Game Boy and obscure Kirby game, but a lot of games are unique with Kirby. There's pinball and blockball and all sorts of stuff. Star Stacker. Kirby's just kind of whatever Nintendo needs Kirby to be.
Yeah, which, they're worst things in the world. Kirby's. Okay, that's that.
Yeah, but so one of the things that I wanted to talk about here with Wario Land 3 is I think it's weird, and I just have questions like why wouldn't you release Wario Land 2 and then Wario Land 3? Because Wario Land 3 is a better game than Wario Land 2. And Wario Land 3 is unique because Wario doesn't have a health bar. Like you can smash him, light him on fire, like there's all sorts of harm that you can do to him, but that's kind of the point
Really?
because like yeah, because that's the whole gimmick with this game because like if you get caught on fire, like he'll run really fast and then you can like clear some jumps and stuff because you're running fast. If you get smushed like a pancake, you can now fit into like smaller holes and stuff like that. So there's like a gimmick with hurting water. Like, see, you're taking damage here, but there's no health bar. Like, yeah, you might take a hit, you might like bounce back for a second, but that's the whole point of Wario because he's just this big hulking brute that you just smash into all these. You bash him with your shoulder dash.
That's
But
weird.
a good game. Wario Land 3 I think is kind of underappreciated. It's honestly probably the Wario game that I've spent the least amount of time with, but
It
I
was also a
still
very late gen.
it was a later Wario and that's why I think it kind of flew under the radar because people were already moving on to Game Boy Advance at the time. But still a good game and I'm glad they included it on the service. I'm just baffled that they would start with 3 and
Yeah.
not 2. So like there you go. So you get lit on fire and then you can like run around crazy style. Like you kind of like lose control of yourself a little bit. And then even if you get burnt, you just become this like like a cartoon. Like he just becomes this like crisp, where you just like see his eyes, you know. So a good game worth checking out, especially if you haven't played the Wario series, because they're in the Mario overall like universe, but definitely they have their own feel.
Yeah, this is not was that what I was expecting, but huh.
So yeah, go back to the main menu. Let's look at the other games
Sure.
quick and talk about. Yeah, and you still have all the cool emulation features, so you can save state it. You can actually play in original Game Boy mode, Game Boy Color mode, Game Boy Advance color palettes,
Let's
Game Boy Pocket.
try Gargoyle's
Yeah,
Quest.
Gargoyle's Quest is another kind of I'll say it's a hidden gem, because I feel like a lot of people
And
didn't play it
this
at the
is the
time.
version because it's
Yeah,
based off the Super Nintendo version.
it's like a quasi not quite a sequel, because it's like this top-down RPG where you walk around here like a, I don't know, like a Dragon Warrior game or something, right? But when you go out into the world and you go into kind of like fight scenes, kind of like Zelda 2, and you get these side-scrolling platforming segments, and you could jump, you could shoot. Yeah, so like here you go. So now you're getting like this RPG game, but mixed with quality side scroll, and you can like wall jump and stuff, you can float. So
Huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
also a good game that goes. I think it's kind of come around as like emulation has become more popular. Like, oh yeah, check out this game that I never played, especially if you liked the Ghost and Goblin series. And
Yeah. Isn't this part of the Ghost and Goblins series?
yeah, because you play exactly. So you play as this you play as Firebrand, who is like the Red Devil guy in the classic arcade and Super Nintendo games, which is a unique spin-off. So instead of playing as Arthur the Knight, you play as the bad guy now, this anti-hero. So also a good game that again, I'll call it a sleeper hit, because I don't think it got fully the recognition that it deserves when it first came out all those years ago.
I remember hearing like Nintendo Power did something and
Yeah.
said that it was good,
Yes. I
but
also remember seeing it in Nintendo, but I never had this. I didn't have any friends that had this.
in college
Harder
I had a
game.
friend that had the Super Nintendo one,
Yeah, Super
and
Ghouls and Ghosts. Yeah.
he swore by it.
Yeah.
So, well,
And then so this is the classic Game Boy palette to kind of represent the pea green color of the original OG Game Boy. And then if you go all the way back to the main menu, you can switch it to Game Boy. You got to go to the game selection screen.
oh really?
Yes, you can't do it on the fly, which is
That
like I,
sucks.
I guess that kind of sucks. But then you can choose the Game Boy Pocket, which is like the more black and white, and then you can change the game to Game Boy Color. So if you go to games, and then go to left, see the little gear icon all the way on the left, and then you go to settings, and then that's where you can change it to Game Boy Pocket or Game Boy Color. But they
Okay.
give you the option there, and then you can mess with kind of the screen sizes and stuff like that, which is also really cool. And Game and Watch Gallery 3 is also another game that I think is weird. Like, why are you releasing 3 when, like, I think this looks a lot cooler and better, right? Um,
It's all
so yeah,
right.
why would they release Game and Watch Gallery 3? Like, which is arguably the best game in the series, definitely has the most content. Why not release 1 and then 2, but coming out of the gate with 3? Like, I just think that's really, I
Yeah,
like
there's
it.
a
It's
lot
just
of
weird.
weird. Like, I'm not going to argue with. Well, that's kind of. I mean, in all honesty, that's been their approach to these releases the entire time. Is yeah, it's a great game, but like, what are you doing?
And the same
That's
thing with Alone in the Dark. Out of all the games, I would not have anticipated them releasing Alone in the Dark on Game Boy Color, because when that game was first announced, people couldn't believe what they were seeing because of the pre-rendered graphics. Like if you played that game on your Game Boy Color back when that game was first released, you would have had your mind blown because it looks really good. Now, granted, it doesn't hold up well, especially just in comparison to the games today, and especially when you're playing it on a big screen. But if you play this in 2001, man, on your Game Boy, like it did look like really, really impressive. So, to have like this adventure game, like where did that come from? Like, again, I'm not complaining. This is not a complaint at all. And I think it's really cool that they
That
included this
that
game.
image does not translate well.
It does not translate up, but when you held this game in your hands
Yeah,
in the
no,
early
it's
2000s,
definitely one of those
awesome.
things that I'm looking at the stream, and I'm like, okay, that's significantly better, but it's smaller.
Yeah, wait until you get to the actual game when you start like walking around because it does like this sprite scaling. So like when the character kind of like walks further away from the screen, yeah, see like that looked really cool back in the day, and it was. And honestly, I think it still is impressive. Now, again, just hasn't held up because it's a really old Game Boy Color game at this point, but still, you see like that to
It
play with.
looks like a bad PlayStation 1 game
Yes,
almost.
exactly. And so to play a bad PlayStation 1 game on your Game Boy Color was crazy, was just unheard of back in the day. So yeah, for your character to get small and big like that as you get closer to the
Yeah, no,
screen,
this
really cool.
is impressive for a Game Boy Color. Um,
Yeah. So have this like mature, dark adventure game in a sea of like, Mario colorful
oh my
platformers
God, you're so chatty.
is
That's a spider.
yeah, I don't remember. There you go.
Wow, it is only the second worst controlling game I've played in a while.
You only got two buttons. You got to make the most of them.
Yeah,
There was a Game Boy Color version of Resident Evil 2, and the prototype you can play online. I played it, which used basically kind of the same
technology.
technology where you can kind of like walk around, like the environment, you kind of get bigger and smaller. Again, was really impressive, but never wasn't finished, never saw the light of day. And the other cool thing, the one other thing that I'll talk about is if you boot up Tetris, you can actually play Tetris now online. So this is the one
Yeah.
thing that I want to talk about. Now, the only thing that sucks about this is the only way to play Tetris. Tetris is the only original Game Boy in this app, the Game Boy Color app, that allows you to play multiplayer. So you can play local multiplayer, but online multiplayer as well. However, because this is Nintendo, you can only play multiplayer with somebody on your friends list. There's no matchmaking. You can't play with randoms. So that's a little limiting. That kind of sucks.
Also, Tetris plays so fucking differently.
It does. Like there's no quality of life features. Like you can't hit up to instant drop, and you can't hold a piece. So there's like all these little things that like you kind of take for granted. It's still a good Tetris game. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not like there are better Tetris games that have come around in the last 30
Yeah, it
plus
is
years.
not. It is rough.
But
Uh,
to play this online, you have to input, you have to exchange friend codes, and that's the only way you can play online. However, what I think is cool if you got the expansion pack subscription, because this is what I've been covering over the last, all this time on my YouTube channel, is you can now play Game Boy Advance linking games over the internet, which I think is so cool because I've been covering specifically the multiplayer mode, specifically the single pack link multiplayer mode, because that multiplayer mode was one, it's just cool that you only need one game pack, and two, often featured unique content that wasn't else that wasn't present anywhere else in the game, whether you even played it with a multi-pack
so you know what
link
they
mode.
could do, but they're not going to do? Put the Pokemon games on this.
Yeah, if they do, that would be like a late, like that'd be, hey, the Switch is now, 10 years old. We need to do something because we don't have a Switch 2 yet. We need to like keep it rolling. But yeah, I don't
I mean, the
foresee
Switch is
them
like 6 years old.
exactly. I don't see, and this is my other theory is that this is how Nintendo will finally release Mother 3, and they'll do it at like November because they'll make it like a selling point to say like, hey, buy a Switch now. Hey, remember, because even though it's a really old system, we got Mother 3 on it. In order to play Mother 3, you need a Switch and you got to buy the subscription. So I think Nintendo might use that as their like marketing sales pitch to
Yeah,
kind of
here's
give the
here's my take
Switch.
on that though, is that everyone who is gonna play Mother 3 has kind of played Mother
Has
3.
has already played it already. I was surprised that like
Like
is okay.
the time to release that was on the Wii,
Yes.
or possibly on the Wii U.
Yeah, I mean they released Earthbound Beginnings on the Wii U. That was the only way to play that.
Well,
But
it's on this too, but yeah.
so
Like they should
they
have just released Mother 3, but
I was yeah, like they could have just like here's Mother 3 as its own downloadable game for $10
yeah,
and
people would have
everybody
lost their
would
fucking minds.
and lost their most exactly. But here it'll be, if they release it now, it might be on the Switch play, but that could be the reason to entice people to subscribe to the expansion pack service versus
We're
the regular service.
Nintendo is so tone deaf at this point. I would be beyond shocked if they
Yeah.
released Mother 3 in the next 5 years.
I mean, it's been this long.
Yeah,
What's
like
like,
Mother 3 came out like
yeah,
I mean it was a late gen Game Boy Advance game. The DS I believe had been out for a little bit, but it no, like that game yeah, we're not going to see that game for a really fucking long time. I mean, the Mother Earthbound Beginnings was released like 20 years afterwards,
and that's a
and
rough game to play. We streamed it on
yeah, we
one
did
of our
stream it.
streams, and that
Yeah,
is a rough. I mean, that is a hard game to play to go back to. It's so grindy.
well, and that was after. I mean, and that was like Earthbound has gotten its cult following, um, and like basically dwindled almost at this point. I would say, like it it
It's been,
it was
yeah, it's
hot
been
for
so
a couple
long.
minutes, and then it's sort of blown over. It's one of those retro games that everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah, you got to play Mother, you got to play Earthbound, you got to play Earthbound, and people play it. And, yeah, there was a good 5 years there that people were super excited about it, but no, that game's never. It's like fucking Dragon Quest X. It's not coming over.
Exactly. Yeah. So it'd be
I mean, I
now they
was
have
part
a
of a letter
reason.
writing campaign for Dragon Quest X. I wrote fucking Square and Nintendo physical letters to try and get them to bring that over. And
Yeah, they're
their
gonna.
response was basically, "Thank you for your attention and your interest in our products. Fuck yourself."
Yes, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, we have no intention of bringing over a massively multiplayer RPG.
Right.
Thank you,
That was on
Final
the
Fantasy 14 is
that,
popular enough. We are
that was
comfortable
on
with
that,
our bags
that was
of
on the
money.
was that on the Wii?
It was honestly at this point fucking um Dragon Quest. That Dragon Quest game is pretty much on the everything.
Hmm.
It's been out for so long. I believe there was like a 3DS version of it.
Oh, maybe. I know
It
there was a bunch of.
it was everywhere in Japan, and it was extremely popular, and they had no fucking interest bringing it out over here.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but they brought out Dragon Quest 9 was okay popular, but it wasn't as popular as they wanted it to be. And uh Eight was kind of the same ways. People talk about like, oh yeah, I played the shit out of eight. Yeah, people who were really into RPGs at that time played a lot of eight. But like 11, a lot of people got into 11. It also helped that it was on everything.
Do you have any wish lists for Game Boy games to appear on this Nintendo service?
Original Game Boy games?
Yeah, Game Boy or Game Boy Color. You got anything?
I have a bunch of Game Boy Advance games that
Yeah.
like it would break, like Golden Sun. Like I saw that Golden Sun
Go,
wasn't released yet because
yeah,
I
it is coming. It is. Yeah, they did
Golden
announce
Sun
Golden
has
Sun.
been confirmed as in the works, but it's not out.
Yep.
Um, and I thought it was like a launch title for this. I saw it wasn't. I was like, you almost had me. You almost had me. Um, Golden Sun, I would probably bite for because I think I've bought that I've bought that a couple times. Like every time it's re-released, I'll bite on that one. Um,
Yeah, I bought
and
that. Yeah, I
what they're
beat that. I beat.
probably
Well, yeah.
doing with that one is the way that Golden Sun 1 and 2 worked is that they were very, very tightly knit together titles.
You got to link them.
No, it was a code system,
You
and I.
yeah, you could use a code or you could use a link cable and just if you had two Game Boys in
Oh,
both
okay.
games. That's because that's how I did it because I played and beat both games on Game Boy Advance using that. So yeah, there's that technique there where you just like Pokemon, you want to trade, Pokemon like saying Golden Sun, not exact you're not trading characters, but your progress from one game carries over.
All right. Yeah. So I think they're probably trying to figure out how to do that successfully.
Yeah, I would like to see maybe the Kid Icarus sequel because that game never really gets any love. People forget that there was a
I
sequel
hear
of
there's a really good Donkey Kong game too.
there. Yeah, Donkey Kong 90,
I set you up for that, you son of a
Donkey
bitch.
Kong 94 is excellent. I really like the original Super Mario Land. I think is really cool. I'd like to see Kirby's Dream Land 2. I mean, Kirby's Dream Land 1 is right there. Why not release the sequel? Kirby's Pinball Land might be another good option. Mega Man 5 on the original Game Boy also goes overlooked because that was like one unique kind of Mega Man game on Game Boy because a lot of the Mega Mans they just kind of borrowed from the Nintendo versions, but Mega Man 5 was
Yeah,
really
they
kind
were
of
like
its
half versions. They only had
exact.
like half the bosses.
Yep, exact. And then I think Final Fantasy Adventure might be kind of a cool
Adventure
addition.
would be a cool time cap. The only problem with
Kid
Adventure is
Dracula.
that's been released
Yes. Yeah,
fucking
it's
a
been like
thousand. Like it's been remastered, it's
remade.
been
Yep.
released.
I know. I replayed it many times I just replayed it on the Vita. That was the last game I actually played on the Vita because they remastered it. Um, so yeah, there's a bunch of games. I'd like to see the other Game and Watch Gallery games. I think that'd be cool. James Bond 007, great game that really I think nobody has ever played. It's basically like your top-down Zelda, like really good game. I streamed that, and I have the full playthrough of that game on my YouTube channel. So I'd like to see that game. That was also a really late Game Boy release. So yeah, a lot of cool games available. I'm excited that Game Boy games are now playable, and I'm going to be looking forward to the service and what comes out in the future, especially that you could play the multiplayer component now online. So I think that's really, really
Interesting.
cool. Very interesting.
All right.
So yeah, this has been the quick Game Boy stream of the new Game Boy app. If you have the lower tier subscription, the $20 a year subscription, you have access to this just like in Nintendo games and Super Nintendo games. But to play the Game Boy Advance games, you need the expansion pack service, as well as you need that expansion pack to play the Genesis and N64 games. And you could follow all of our work at mygamer.com, and you could follow me on Twitter at ZackGaz, ZackGaz. And until next time, thank you for watching and game on.